All right. So here's what I want to say. First game that we had in LCA in Detroit, we're gonna throw that one in the garbage. All right. We're just gonna take that one and we're gonna we're gonna take it. See, we got it. We're gonna put it over here. And we're gonna just let it go. All right. We're gonna let it go. I I'm fine. You're gonna have one of those games where your defense just can't get a stop. You just can't get on top. For whatever reason, the game wasn't just going your way. That's fine. You lose that game. I'll be upset about it, but it's fine. Game 4, however, that one I have a much harder time getting loose off of my just memory and off of that is a game you gotta win. It was low scoring. They won the last time they held the Knicks under 100 points. In fact, they won the last time they held the Knicks to 94 points. And you had opportunities to win that game. You're up double digits going into the fourth quarter. You're up late in the fourth quarter, less than 5 minutes to go. You have a multi-possession lead. You have to close out games. And you know what? Maybe it is just a matter of this team is just not experienced enough. This team doesn't have the talent that New York does. All things considered, Karl Anthony Towns has been tremendous for the Knicks this series, especially in those two games after he completely dropped the ball, in game 2. He's been tremendous, especially from the long ball. It's like every time he takes a three, I'm like, uh-oh, because he's going to make it. I've never seen a big man make threes like Karl Anthony Towns. But that ending of the game is really the discussion. And here's my thing. I have two minds on this. All right. My fan mind and my, homer mind is the Pistons got screwed. The NBA hates Detroit. They want New York to win because it'll bring in more money. It'll bring in more views. So they got to screw Detroit. Even though it was obviously a foul, Tim Hardaway Jr. would have gone to the line. He would have sunk at least 2 of those free throws because he would have had 3. He would have sunk at least 2 of them. Heck, he would have sunk at least 1 of them, and they could have gone to overtime at the very least. And then who knows what happens from there. But if he would have made all 3, he would have put the team up. They would have won the game. They only had like 4 seconds left. I don't know if the Knicks had a timeout to that point. All of that. I feel that. I wish it, and it's just a brutal way to lose a game when you have the opportunity, you have the basketball with a chance to take the lead. All you need is a basket, and you just get screwed by the referees. Something completely out of your control. On the other hand, Cade Cunningham has to make that shot. Full stop, end of story. That's it. You have to make that shot. You are one of the best players in the NBA right now. You are an all-NBA caliber guard. You're the best player on the floor for both teams. You can't just miss that shot. If you want to be a killer, you want to be a face of this league, you got to make those kinds of shots. Now, I understand he had a great game. I'm not disparaging the game that he had, and he's had a pretty great series as well, almost. He's 1 rebound and 1 assist a game away from a triple-double in the series. But, man, you can't miss those shots. And, again, you had a lead going into the fourth quarter. You had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. You blew it again. This is not the first time. This is now the third, or maybe the fourth. This is now the third, at least the second, if you don't want to count that first game at home, which you ended up losing just by 2 points, albeit the game was not as close as the final score indicated. But I digress. You could have won game 1 in New York. You give up the 21-0 run. You win game 2 in New York by the skin of your own teeth. You almost blew that one too. You really don't ever take control of game 3 at your house. You were in control, in the driver's seat, chance to drive the knife in and twist it on New York to split the homestand and go back to Madison Square Garden 2-2. And instead, we're talking about needing to bring this series to 7 games just to have a shot to get to the second round. And I got to tell you, I was pretty darn bummed about the result of that game. I I am the one guy who says, you know what, I'm happy for the ride. This team has been fantastic. I think that they are fully capable of winning a first round, but then from there, it's icing on the cake. But either way, you end the playoff drought, you get that win. Unfortunately, you don't get it at home, so you still have the home playoff drought. But I mean, technically speaking, you do still have a chance to get another home game if you can win tonight. But man, like this is a series where you really, if you just could have won it. And I know it's not over technically. Maybe by the time next week, the Pistons will have, somehow made a miraculous comeback, and we'll be talking about the Pistons in the second round. I got to tell you, though, it doesn't look like it. It's hard to come back 3-1. It's especially hard to come back 3-1 when it's basically the Cade Cunningham show featuring maybe Malik Beasley or maybe Tim Hardaway Jr. Cade just doesn't have enough scores around him. And that brings me to the next point, which is, what are you going to do in this offseason? Because you got to get somebody. And I'm not saying you got to, sell the farm to go get Kevin Durant or go get Devin Booker or any of these. I understand that, the asking price for some of these players is going to be pretty astronomical and to the point where I'm not sure that I'm ready. But you certainly should be making upgrades. As much as I liked Tim Hardaway Jr., as much as I even liked Malik Beasley, their performances in the playoffs tell me why the teams that had them before kind of let them go. Because while they are good players, fine players even, when push comes to shove, when you need a shot maker in those tough spots, they just aren't that guy. And it sucks. Again, I really like those players. I think they were really solid moves by Langdon. But he's going to have to make more solid moves. He's going to have to elevate. Now you've shown, okay, Detroit is a destination. You got a superstar in Cade, and you got a lot of young players like Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, a lot of guys that can grow and develop to being that next, maybe not superstar, but that next kind of upper tier player. Obviously, not all of them are going to hit. We'll see what ends up happening. One other thing I want to point out to the people who are not, or to the people who are far too invested in they got to go out and get a superstar. They got to go out and get Devin Booker. They got to go out and get Kevin Durant or any of these guys. Allow me to make a hypothetical. What if the difference in this game where you're down 1 point, instead of all of it being on Cade, you have another player who, through this season when he played, it's pretty darn clutch. Had a couple of game-winning shots. That player's Jaden Ivey. Of course, coming back from a leg injury, for a guy who is hyper-athletic and fast as he is, not exactly ideal. However, perhaps the addition that you will have is more so in the addition of someone that you already had and you don't have to spend picks, players, etc. getting it. I'm not saying that Jaden Ivey is Derrick Rose. I'm not saying that. Okay. I would love it if he was, but I'm not saying that. However, if Jaden Ivey is as good as he was going into this season, where he was, I mean, go ahead and look up his numbers. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can look up his numbers. He was doing really well, and he hit some really clutch shots, and I got the feeling that this guy had ice water in his veins, especially when Cade was struggling in those tough spots. He was elevated. So maybe your 1-2 punch is your Cade and your Ivy. And it reminds me a little bit of, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum out in Boston. So, fine. You want to try and go get Devin Booker? Cool. You want to go out and try to get, pick a player. I don't know. Lauri Markkanen. Fine. Not opposed to it in principle. But I would caution not to break up what you got here too much, because I look at a team like Milwaukee, who I know they already won a championship, but after they won that championship, they started, okay, we don't really need PJ Tucker. Okay, we don't really need Drew Holiday. Okay, we don't really need Chris Middleton. And now they're down 3-1 in a series against the Pacers, albeit they're winning this Game 5 right now. Either way, the Pistons, regardless of what ends up happening tonight or the rest of the series, they've had a successful year. And I'm incredibly happy about the future of this team. I love seeing that Detroit basketball is back and fun and entertaining. But man, I am disappointed. However, it does give me hope. This team, with a couple of nice tweaks, a couple of additions, could be the next team in the East to really take a stand, especially if Cade continues to grow into that MVP candidate that he is certainly capable of being. Hi, it's me again. If you enjoyed what you just saw, hit the like and subscribe button. We do live shows every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there.